Coming up in a few minutes, we're going to speak with Mayor Jim Watson, so you'll definitely want to stay with us. I'm Sam LaPrade filling in for Rob Snow. There is no two ways about it. This pandemic has been so challenging. Obviously, the loss of lives, incredibly tragic, the loss of jobs, the economic piece. There is another piece that really is difficult when it comes to this pandemic, and it's relationships. A lot of relationships have really been challenged at this time. We're seeing a number of people separating at this time. We're seeing a number of conflicts between children and, of course, their parents. We're seeing a lot of this, and sometimes even in the workplace. So we wanted to speak with Dr.Genevieve Boudreault. Hello.
Hi there.
Hello, Doctor. Doctor, of course, you're from the Center of Interpersonal Relationships.
Yes.
This has been a very, very challenging time, as we know, for many, many people. What are you hearing from people when they're coming to speak with you? Are they feeling a lot of pressure and a lot of stress at this time?
Yes, a lot of pressure, especially since, the second lockdown. People before, they were coming for other things, and then COVID was like a secondary thing. Now people come consult us because of COVID specifically and challenge in their relationship, in their workplace, in their life. Children's being homeschooled, like doing the school online. So it's very, very challenging and had a lot of pressure on people for sure.
I think if we think back to March of 2020 and we were sort of told, okay, this was going to be 2 weeks, and a lot of families sort of took the positive piece and said, well, more family time and that's lovely and lots of togetherness. Many families are maybe feeling that there's too much togetherness.
Yes, it's a fact. Sometimes people, they work from home, like the couple both of them work from home, and the children as well is going to school online. And sometimes there's many children. So there's a lot of time together, and people find it difficult to find some time alone. And it's like we never been used to be together that much. It's like something to be totally new that we have to adapt to. And yeah, for sure, it's something that most people are encountering nowadays.
It really is challenging, and we know from what I understand, a lot of marriages break down for three main reasons: finances, intimacy, and communication. Those three pieces would also be challenged during this pandemic. A lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people are having a hard time spending that much time at home. They're saying, but I have a meeting at 2:00, and you have a meeting at 2:00, and Susie also has to be on the Zoom link for her school. Who's going to give something up? Let's talk about that. What advice are you providing to people coming to see you?
For couples, for sure, it's okay to ask for a bit of like balance between the togetherness and the separateness. So it's okay in a safe relationship to tell your spouse, hey, I really need my time alone, and I'm just going to go walk the dog for an hour, or I'm just going to go in the other room, watch my show for 2 hours. It's okay to ask for time alone. So some people, they feel that they can't ask for that, but it's actually very good to have this balance between the two. So I see mostly couple in this kind of context, and it's very important to balance that. Also, people find that we cannot go out, so how do we have dates? So date night are challenging. So I think it's important too that people, despite the pandemic, reserve special time for a special night where they can order food in and, dress up a little bit, just not being in their sweatpants, and maybe put on a dress or a shirt and make a special occasion out of it. Because a lot of time together does not mean necessarily quality time, right? So it's important to make that time for that.
Such good advice there. And I often think about the flip side of that, whether that be maybe a senior living on their own who's, maybe once or twice would see the grandkids and they're missing that. They might be missing their book club or, their bocce ball or whatever it is that they like to participate in, and they're missing that social interaction. What advice would you have for someone in that situation?
Just senior people, that they are really like the people that suffer the most from this pandemic. So there's a small percentage that lives in senior home, but and then they can be surrounded by other people. But people that live alone at home still, that's very challenging. So this sounds very cliche, and hopefully by this point in the pandemic, people got better with technology, but FaceTiming and Zoom. So I taught my own grandmother how to FaceTime. So FaceTiming, your children and grandchildren, and not staying isolated is so important.
It absolutely is. And I remember when the pandemic first hit, I felt like my mother was like almost a baking machine, because she was dropping muffins off at the doors of people in her apartment, just because, it's important to feel like you've got purpose, and people are knowing that there's support at the other end as well. Those kind gestures, right? Let's talk a little bit about our kids, because I think this is something that isn't being talked about enough. Their mental health coming out of this, those social skills that in many ways they've missed for 16 or 15, 16 months now. Where do we sort of start with that? Many of them were addicted to their screens prior to the pandemic, and this has only made things worse, because now we're saying, no, you need to look at your screen 8 hours a day.
Yeah, that's very hard for kids, because they're also they need to be more autonomous, like going online and listening, where usually in school, like their teacher tell them to go there and to do that. Now they're alone, and sometimes the parents are working, so it's very challenging for them. And the socialization, obviously, they're missing out a lot on that. But what I say to people that have children, so important to bring them outside, and burn some steam, because it can be very difficult for them to stay at home and be isolated. And like either, going on bike rides and, going on walks, and now that the weather is starting to be better, just getting outside is also a nice form of learning. I know for parents it means planning and stuff like that. It's hard on the parents, but for the kids, they at least need that piece of normality in a situation that's so abnormal.
It certainly is abnormal. Yeah. I often think about a group of people that I don't think we're talking about enough as well, and that is caregivers. We know that people are, really caring for, whether it be maybe someone with dementia, or maybe it's a child on the autism spectrum, and they would normally have opportunities for respite. And let's be honest, those opportunities in many, many ways have gone away. And the mental health of those caregivers, and that's 24/7. I mean, that's 2:00 in the morning, that's 2:00 in the afternoon. What advice would you have for a caregiver that maybe feels that they're just really at their last straw?
That's a good one. That's a very difficult one. It's such a difficult situation. It's hard to have an answer that's just like all made for these people. But yet again, reaching out, like, as we cannot really socialize in person, but any way we can reach out to people and not isolate in that, like calling a friend or going on a social distance walk with someone, like anything that breaks the isolation is a good thing. For sure. But we have to, sometimes there's no sense in a situation like that, and it's super difficult. Having empathy for oneself, self-compassion, like doing some self-care too, like even though they're taking care of someone 24/7, like having a nice bath or doing something for themselves is very, very important.
We're speaking with Dr. Genevieve Boudreault from the Center of Interpersonal Relationships. I think, as we go through this pandemic, it has been so challenging on many, many people. And of course, then we're learning about the tragedy in Kamloops. 250 children are found. Their remains are found on a residential school property. There's grief. There's that grief. Of course, the grief of people that have been lost during this pandemic, the grief of lost time, the grief of job loss. What are your sort of advice for us regarding grief, Dr. Boudreault?
There's a lot of loss in this pandemic for sure. This is important. As I said, making sense of a senseless situation is very difficult. We talk a lot about resiliency, resiliency being able to adapt to difficult circumstances. And a pandemic the one we're facing is a bit like this kind of trauma that we need to be bouncing back from. I would say, I'm a lot into self-care and mindfulness and, just being aware of what's lost and trying to realize that from all of that, maybe something is coming out of that's not necessarily negative, maybe another opportunity or maybe more time for oneself, more quality time with the family because we're staying at home. Resiliency is also trying to see what's there that's going to last and that's good for us, not only what's lost.
It's such a good point. It's such a good point. Dr. Boudreault, how are doctors caring for themselves during this time? I think it's a really important point because I think we often lean on you. I think it's one thing to sort of have an appointment with your doctor or your therapist in your case, and we go and we sort of share everything, and in many ways it it sort of builds on your day. How are you all caring for yourselves?
Well, I can talk about me personally. I really believe in mindfulness. Like I said that earlier, I think there's a lot of things that usually psychologists are proning. Like you go to the gym, you feel better, like a bit of behavioral activation, you socialize, you go to a restaurant with a friend. We cannot do none of this. So what's left to do? And I think mindfulness, meaning like a bit of meditation, like sitting with oneself and going within, I think is a very good antidote to the chaos that's outside of us, just to find a bit of calm and, trying to not blend with difficult emotion and trying to be more relaxed in these stressful times. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm doing. I think this is really helpful for myself. That's one of the things you can still do in a pandemic.
Well, we certainly appreciate your time today. It's very valued. Dr. Genevieve Boudreault, of course, from the Center of Interpersonal Relationships. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, really.
When we